We will be considering the cerebrum, or the big brain hat, in terms of its gray matter and its white matter. As you can see here, the gray matter is the cortex of the brain. And the word cortex means bark like a tree, not bark like a dog. One of the things that you might notice about a brain is a big longitudinal fissure which divides the brain into the left and right hemispheres. There are only very few structures that are capable of moving from the left side to the right side of the brain. We talked about commissures in the spinal cord, and we have commissures here in the brain, but only very few. A sulcus is a valley or an indentation of the brain, kind of like these you see here. A sulcus is not as deep as a fissure. In between sulci are gyri, which are basically hills. Each gyrus, as we are coming to find out, has very specific functions. But no gyrus works alone. This gray matter can and does connect to other parts of the brain by using myelinated axons of white matter. The most important landmark of the cerebrum is the central sulcus. This is a sulcus or a valley that it's different than all of the other sulci or valleys because it divides the brain into the front and the back, into the rostral and caudal, and it divides the brain by function too. In general, most rostral or anterior to the central sulcus gyri are motor structures. Most structures that are caudal or posterior to the central sulcus, most of them are sensory. So, for example, the gyrus that is immediately adjacent to the central sulcus and anterior to it is called the precentral gyrus. And it should come as no surprise that the gyrus immediately posterior to the central sulcus is called the postcentral gyrus. The cerebral cortex, which is just that gray matter outer covering, it is actually a layer of about 6 different cells that we know of. And the neurons that make up these 6 different layers are neurons of many different shapes. Most of them that you can see here are bipolar neurons. However, there are anaxonic neurons here as well. Most of the cells in your cerebral cortex are referred to as stellate cells, which are they're technically the neuroglia astrocytes. Astrocytes are the most important neuroglia because they're tasked with obtaining things from blood vessels and feeding it to neurons. The most common neuron type in the cerebral cortex are these pyramidal neurons, which have a kind of a funky long axon here and a whole bunch of dendrites. Previously, pyramidal neurons were classified as bipolar neurons because they fit the rough definition of the shape, but we've come to find out that they have a very different function. When we cover the cerebrum in more detail, we will take care to cover 3 types of areas in the cerebrum. There are sensory areas, which are mostly posterior to the central sulcus. So we'll see some sensory areas like the occipital sensory area and the auditory sensory areas. We'll also explore motor areas, which are mostly anterior to the central sulcus. The third type of area that we're going to look at is called an association area. These are very complex areas that might be taking in sensory information from a variety of different sources and consolidating it into a memory or a pattern of instructions or an output into an emotion. For example, there is an occipital sensory area that perceives information by way of your cranial nerve number 2, the optic nerve. However, this occipital sensory area can't assign meaning to anything it sees. There is an occipital association area, and it's right nearby, and that area can assign meaning to the incoming sensory information by way of the optic nerve. The same type of association areas exist for almost all the senses. We have a primary sensory area that just says, I feel, and then we have an association area that says, I feel this. We're also going to see very specialized association areas like those that are tasked with language and other complex output.